Hello, thanks for staying with me. Let's not rush this. I want to tell you about South Korea. Not like a history lesson, not like a travel guide. Just the way I would tell it to a friend. For most of its history, Korea was not a country people bet on. It wasn't large. It wasn't rich. It didn't have obvious advantages. It sat on a peninsula, exposed between bigger powers, China nearby, Japan across the water. Later, the Soviet Union and the United States pulling strings from far away. History didn't pass by Korea. It went straight through it. When that happens again and again, you learn something early. You don't survive by being loud. You survive by being careful. During the Joseon era, life was strict and slow. Not peaceful, just controlled. People learned hierarchy young. Children listened more than they spoke. Respect was expected, not negotiated. Education mattered, but not in a dreamy way. It wasn't about passion. It was about not falling behind. That mindset never disappeared. It just changed clothes over time. Then came Japanese occupation. This part still sits heavy in Korea, even now. Korean children were punished for speaking their own language in school. Names were changed. Culture was pushed aside. People were told, directly and indirectly, that being Korean was something to outgrow. Some resisted openly. Some cooperated quietly. Most just tried to survive without drawing attention. What matters isn't judging them. It's understanding what that kind of experience does to a people. When your identity is taken from you once, you don't treat it lightly again. I think this explains a lot about modern Korea. The care, the control, the need to define itself clearly. It's not insecurity, it's memory. In 1945, Japan surrendered. Korea was free. People celebrated. Flags returned. The language came back into public life. For a moment, it felt like the hardest part was over. But here's what rarely gets said clearly. Korea had no plan. There was no strong, unified government ready to take over. No agreement on leadership. No time to organize after decades of occupation. And into that gap walked two outside powers. The Soviet Union entered from the north. The United States entered from the south. Not because they deeply understood Korea, but because they were watching each other. Someone drew a line at the 38th parallel, quickly, casually. They said it was temporary. Most Koreans believed that too. At first, families still crossed the line. People still assumed elections would reunite the country. But the Cold War hardened fast. The North, backed by the Soviet Union, moved toward communism. The South, backed by the United States, moved toward capitalism. Two systems formed, two governments followed. And slowly, almost without ceremony, Korea stopped being one country. In 1950, the line stopped being theoretical. The Korean War began. This wasn't just a war between ideologies. It was brother against brother, village against village, family against itself. Cities were destroyed. Millions died. Seoul changed hands multiple times. People fled south with whatever they could carry. Others were trapped in the north, unable to leave. When the fighting stopped in 1953, there was no peace treaty, just a ceasefire. The border stayed. The separation became permanent. What was meant to be temporary turned into one of the most guarded borders in the world. There are still elderly people in South Korea who don't know what happened to their siblings in the north. They grew old waiting. Some were allowed brief reunions decades later, a few hours together, cameras watching, then goodbye, forever. No phone calls, no letters, no second chance. That kind of loss doesn't fade. It settles quietly into daily life. People often ask why North and South Korea feel like different worlds now. They didn't start that way. They had the same language, same food, same history. What changed them was time, under very different kinds of pressure. The North closed itself off. Power concentrated. Information narrowed. Control became survival. The South opened outward. Slowly, unevenly, painfully. Democracy came late, after protests and sacrifice, but it came. Over decades, the gap grew wider, economically, socially, mentally. By the time the world paid attention, the two Koreas no longer recognized each other. After the war, South Korea was exhausted. Not developing country poor, just worn down. Cities were rubble. There were no natural resources waiting to be discovered. No safety net at the bottom. So the country made a hard decision. Work, study, export, that was the plan. Factories ran long hours. People slept less. Children studied late into the night. Parents sacrificed without knowing if their children would ever live better lives. This era often gets turned into inspirational slogans. I don't like that. It wasn't inspiring. It was necessary. And it cost people things they never got back. South Korea grew fast. Too fast sometimes. Economic growth came before democracy. Protests happened. Students were beaten. Voices were silenced. People were told to wait. Freedom would come later. Eventually it did. But the pressure stayed. Even today, you can feel it. In schools, in offices, in the way people apologize for resting. Korea didn't grow gently. It grew urgently. I respect that, but I don't pretend it was kind to everyone. After the financial crisis in the late 1990s, something shifted. Korea stopped asking only how to survive. It started asking who it was. Culture became a way to speak. Music, film, television. Not chaotic, disciplined, focused, intentional. K-pop didn't work because it was flashy. It worked because nothing was accidental. Even emotion was trained. That might sound artificial, but it connected because the effort was real. Korean films didn't try to explain themselves. They showed uncomfortable truths. Class tension, family pressure, quiet resentment. People around the world recognize those feelings, even if they didn't share the same language. Korean food tells you more about the country than any speech ever could. Kimchi isn't meant to impress you immediately. It's sharp, strong, sometimes uncomfortable. Meals are shared. Dishes sit in the middle. No one eats alone unless they have to. Soju flows easily. Conversations drift. Sometimes people talk. Sometimes they just sit together in silence. Koreans may not open up quickly, but they don't fake warmth. When they care, you feel it. South Korea isn't large, but it feels full. Mountains rise suddenly. Temples sit quietly next to busy streets. Ancient palaces exist beside glass buildings without trying to compete. The past isn't locked behind glass. It's just there. Today, South Korea is successful, influential, connected, technology everywhere, global culture, recognition. But underneath, there's still tension. Young people feel pressure. Older generations feel the cost of what it took to get here. Success didn't erase questions about happiness. It just made them harder to ignore. That honesty is what makes Korea interesting. It hasn't finished its story yet. I don't think South Korea succeeded because it was smarter or stronger than everyone else. I think it succeeded because it remembered. It remembered hunger. It remembered loss. It remembered what it cost to stand back up. That memory didn't make Korea loud. It made it focused. If you ever visit South Korea, don't rush. Walk at night. Eat slowly. Watch how people interact when they think no one is paying attention. You don't need to understand everything. Some places don't need to be fully explained to be felt. South Korea is one of them. Thanks for listening.